Be strong.
Right.
All right. So you want to talk about format identity today?
I mean, essentially, I don't even know what that means, to be totally honest. Like,
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about it, but like, it's come up like with the ongoing ban discussion. Like, nothing is going to get banned anytime soon.
I don't think so.
There's always going to be the talk of like what should go, and I mean, we can just dive right in, I guess.
Hello and welcome to Eternal Dirtles. I'm your host Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Blackman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Yo, what's going on, bro? How you doing?
Same old stuff. It's been a minute. We took a little break. I think we're going to take a break for a good portion of the rest of August, just to get our bearings, get a chance to kind of refresh ourselves as we do during the summer. I suggest anybody listening take a little bit of a summer vacation as well.
That first break, us being absent for a couple weeks now was because for my everyday job, I was covering both the Olympics and the CrossFit Games, and they happened to just overlap because the Olympic Games got postponed. So because they got postponed a year, it ended up being that the calendars made it so that they overlapped. And usually those types of events by themselves would be like, you're on 24 hours covering it all anyway. So to have them both at the same time, it was a lot. So there wasn't really much time for anything outside of work for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it sounds like so much.
But now we're back, and we're going to talk about everybody's favorite thing. Format identity. Let's talk about format identity, Zach.
There we go. Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about format identity. What is format identity? What does it mean?
That's a good question. You want to know what spawned my so I want to talk about format identity because I don't get it, and by I don't get it, I mean I don't like it, and I'll explain what I mean by I don't like it, and then I'll talk about things I do like. I specifically like all of our listeners. I have heard a lot of the ban talk, the ongoing ban talk, about what needs to go. Should days get banned? Should one of the MH2 cards get banned? Should anything get banned? Should I get banned?
Probably.
There's a lot of discussion about what should or should not happen. It's always ongoing. There will always be ban discussion talk. However, one thing that I think does not help in any discussion is when somebody brings up the idea of format identity, which I see come up as a part of that issue a lot. They say, oh, days shouldn't get banned because it's part of the format identity. And that makes me feel like, well, I should say rather, the format, a card being part of the format identity is just because it's been around for a long time, right? That's it? That's all it is?
Correct. The
It's
longer
not like
a card exists in this format, the more a part of its identity that card is.
I think my issue with format identity and the fact and how ill-defined it is that it's not a pillar of the format. I get what the pillars of a format mean.
We had that whole discussion on cast with Aaron Forsyth when he was on the cast famously.
He was famously on the cast. Thanks for coming on, Aaron Forsyth.
And he said, transgressive things need a place to live.
Transgressive cards need a place to live. So the difference between a pillar of the format is one of the fundamental strategies that you can build your deck around and be competitive. That is my understanding as to what a pillar of the format is. So in this case, pillars of the format are things like Ancient Tomb decks are a pillar. Green Sun Zenith decks are a pillar. Brainstorm Ponder decks would be a pillar. Mm-hmm. What else would be? I mean, with MH2 coming out, it essentially made Urza Saga and Ragavan both pillars, right? Like if you want to be aggressively slanted, or if you want to be doing artifact synergies, or you want to do it all, essentially because the issue with those cards is that they go into every single kind of archetype, both aggro, combo, and control. That's a whole different issue. We'll get into it later. Yeah. But when it comes to pillars of a format,
it's just what's ubiquitous at that point, right?
I understand pillars to just be what a broad range of strategies revolve around. So you can play a whole bunch of different types of Ponder Brainstorm decks, or you could play a whole bunch of different kinds of Ancient Tomb decks, right? Like you could be a Chalice Ancient Tomb deck, or you could be like a Painter Grindstone Ancient Tomb deck, or you could be any number of the combo Ponder Brainstorm decks, or you could be like a Fair Control deck with Ponder Brainstorm, or you could be a Green Sun Zenith combo deck, or you could be like Elves, or you could be a Green Sun Zenith like tutor package deck like Maverick. So you could be an Aether Vial deck, right? Aether Vial is a pillar because of all the different kinds of creature decks like Merfolk and D&T. I can understand those are what pillars are, and I can understand the argument to not get rid of a pillar of the format, because then that would just derail a whole bunch of decks out of a format that revolve around a pillar.
Sure.
When it comes to format identity, I don't know what that means. So every time I hear it, it reminds me of when I'm watching the news and I hear anybody in Congress invoke what the founding fathers meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, no, you see, the founding fathers intended this thing to happen this way. Insert my agenda. And that means that it doesn't mean anything because the founding fathers aren't around. Format identity is entirely interpretive, right? Like if somebody came up to me and were like, Phil, you can't ban days because it's part of the format's identity. And I say, I don't identify it as the legacy format. It's played in 2, maybe 3 decks, right? One of which is Delver, which has been a ubiquitous shell forever. And the other 2 are like fast combo decks that have the room to do so, right? So it's like Doomsday and maybe some variants of Show and Tell, and that's it, right? Doesn't seem format identifying to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, the concept of format identity to me is basically what people are saying versus what they mean. What people are saying is the word format identity, and I think what they mean is what has been the format the last 5 to 6 years, right? I think that's where they're going. They're just not saying it well. But that said, like, look at the last 5 years of Legacy. What's been a constant? Just Delver, pretty much, right? Like Delver and Death and Taxes, Storm.
Yeah, well, I'm saying like the known decks that have been around that have just gotten upgrades as more sets come out and they evolve, and like the decks that are able to remain are the decks that can constantly adjust to the ever increasing power of the format as new, more powerful cards get printed, right?
Yeah.
That is, yeah. I mean, cards can evolve, which means that, quote, the format is going to evolve. And so the identity of the format is going to evolve. But like, if you were to look at decks now versus decks, like you said, 5 years ago, you have some shells, right? Like, yeah, if you want to play Terminus, the way that you were playing Terminus back when you could play, like when you were playing like Blue, White, Red versus post War of the Spark, where you're playing like Bant with Uro and stuff, it's entirely different.
Yeah.
Like the way that you Terminus people in a deck like that, it's way more mid-rangey versus what it used to be as being like way more like Drago control. Same way now, it's like before when you were playing Delver, like you had Nimble Mongoose and Tarmogoyf, right? Now you just have like value generating 1-drops all the way down. And then you have a bigger Tombstalker. Like, was Tarmogoyf a part of the format's identity? Was Nimble Mongoose part of the format's identity? Canadian Thresh? Like, those are eras.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is so when I think 5 years ago, like, I think, like, it's tough. I think 5 years ago, and I think when the podcast started, right? Like, that's about 5 years ago. But honestly, like, when the podcast started, I was not even playing, like, that's still not before cons came out, right? Like Treasure Cruise, kind of to me, when Treasure Cruise got banned, that sort of split the format from like one style to the next, right? Like we had this super aggro, like tempo-based format that became less about tempo and more about just raw card advantage. And then when they were like, okay, that's wrong, then they banned Treasure Cruise, and that sort of split the format into like value decks, tempo decks, and combo decks.
You reminded me of a good point that I think might fit here as to why I think the argument for format identity just doesn't make any sense at all, because it's undefined terms, and that means that we're arguing about things that we're not agreeing upon, which is An example, Deathrite Shaman, when it was banned, it was in 40% of decks. And it was in a whole bunch of different style of decks. It happened to be in the best deck, which was Grixis Delver, but it showed up in Maverick. I played it in Esper Mentors and a bunch of different brews. It enabled 4-color check pile. It did a lot of things, right? It was in a bunch of different decks. And if you looked at me at the time and said, what does the format identity of Legacy look like? I'd be like, it's Deathrite Shaman decks and combo.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. But then Deathrite Shaman went, where was the format identity argument? You see what I'm saying? It's like, it makes that's where I get caught up. And it's one of those things where I am advocating to either all of us as a Legacy community either mutually define what we mean when we say format identity and agree that that is what we are striving for when we are looking to get cards axed, or just remove the idea of format identity and what it's supposed to look like out of our discussions, because it's not doing any good.
I would go with the latter. Format identity is a white whale. It's the same thing as like metagame. Like, sure, metagames exist, but they're so ephemeral. You know, it doesn't like that. So you can talk about a metagame and it makes sense, but when you say something like we have to ban this card because of other, because of how the metagame was or whatnot, that's crazy to me, right? Like, you can't defend a card choice or a format based off of its metagame. And I think that's sort of what people are trying to do with the idea of format identity. But format identity is just like a broader scope of that. I don't know, man. I just don't think I don't know that it's necessary to put too much stock into even the concept of having something banned right now.
I should say, like, ban discussion aside, I'm not advocating for a ban. I mean, there are cards that I would happily see go, but I don't think that anything is going to get banned. I don't think anything has the clout right now to warrant that. I'm saying that, like, any of this moving forward, there's definitely going to be a time where something does need to go, right? Yeah. Like, it's not like we're the Legacy is clean from this point forward. Like, eventually we're going to run into something, and I think the arguments of format identity, whatever the hell that means, should just die now.
When did Ren get banned?
Ren got banned right after GP Atlanta, which was won by Cyrus.
Because I feel like it was cold out when that happened.
I don't remember what the weather was when it was banned, but I remember that Ren did not have a long tenure in Legacy. That was a point where the
November 18th.
Yeah, it wasn't around for very long, right? It was
so, it came out in the summer, like,
yeah. So it was around for like 3 months, and then it went. Underworld Breach was around for like 2 weeks. It had more life online because it came out before the set was around, but like it was banned. It was banned very fast.
Yeah. With the reason why I bring up Ren and 6 banning specifically, because that set came out. It was, it's supposed to inject cards into the format, right?
Horizons 1, yeah.
So that's, to me, that's the same situation. Like, that was, let's say they did screw up with Ren and 6. I think that they didn't. That's a whole nother discussion. But let's say that ban was warranted. That means that Modern Horizons came out like 2 months ago?
MH2?
Yeah.
Something like that. I lose time.
I can't even tell anymore because everything comes out so fast.
Well, I also lose time.
I feel like
things come out on Moto sooner than they do.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, the physical release is just so stuttered as well. But here's the thing that is crazy to me. I don't feel like we've even got to see people respond to these cards yet in meaningful ways, because we haven't had any real big live events, obviously, right? I feel like we need live data before we can start just banning stuff, just because, like, the people on Moto are upset. Like, we haven't had any large scale events, so the concept of banning things for or against format identity is just wild to me, because there's no real data. I don't consider MTGO data to be good definitive data because people are just going to play with what constantly play with what they have. And I don't know, man. I just don't think that it's. I can't stop people from talking about bands. It'll never happen. That's you can't stop people from telling you bad beat stories at GPs. So there's no way we can stop people from talking about bands. That's not what I'm here to do. But I think it's premature.
I think your point. I think I'm getting it, and
I know I'm a little all over the place.
I agree that people are only going to be able to play with the cards that they own. Not everybody can change decks all the time, which means that not always, if you are considering paper events, that bans are warranted, because even if a deck is the best deck, it will not necessarily be entirely format warping because not enough players will be playing it. There's been many instances over our lifetimes in Legacy where Storm or another kind of combo deck has easily been tier 0, not close, but not enough people knew how to pilot it, or not enough people own the cards to build that deck and learn it. And so it didn't show up nearly as high as the percentage as it should have been based on how much more powerful against the rest of the format it was. That's happened several times over our tenures.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying there.
Here's an observation that I think is important to make, is that it's been almost 2 years since we've had a live Legacy event, like a real, good sized live Legacy event. I think people are going to put their money where their mouth is when they go to their first real live Legacy event, and they're going to play what they want to play. They're going to play what they want to play to win with.
Sure.
There's several times where I showed up to a GP and I was like, you know what? I'll play Blue Red Storm in Modern. Just see what that's like. The first event I go back to, I want to play a deck that I can win with, because I'd like to do well in that first event back. I want to start off on a high note,
Yeah, of course, people are going to look to also enjoy themselves when they play. Let's move on from the whole format identity thing. I think the point is well made there. I think it's nonsense, and we can move on from it. I think if we do move forward talking about anything, even surrounding ban discussion, that as a consensus, we need to agree that whatever we're discussing as a card that potentially needs to go should go for the overall health of the format, not necessarily what a certain player or player's type likes to play. So I think Ragavan is tremendously awful in all regards from a design standpoint, in that it's a snowbally 1-drop that doesn't really ask anything from you in deck building. It makes both mana and it draws cards. I think
it's weird. Fundamentally, it feels like Deathrite Shaman to me, and I don't understand how they didn't figure out that it's the same card, and just this one doesn't deal with the graveyard.
I get it. Yeah, this one you need to get through on the board. I fundamentally
there
think
are some slight differences.
I think it's an unhealthy design. I think it's a fundamentally unhealthy design. Does that mean that it needs to go? Not necessarily. Because even though I may not like that, because I am often the miracle guy who doesn't want to be playing a bunch of creatures on turn 1, the D&T player is happy to see Ragavan every single round of an event. So I get that. Ragavan is reasonable in some instances, and my disliking for it is not enough reason for me to advocate against it, other than it is a snowbally card. However, there are some cards that, even if I don't like them, I can also back up by saying I think they make the format worse systemically. And that is where I think the argument against Daze can come in. Because as cards get more powerful over time, they are going to continue to make more powerful 1-drops, right? Delver is falling out of deck lists as a 4-of because there are more powerful 1-drops to be playing now.
Do you remember when we were talking about banning Delver?
Because Delver was the premier threat. There weren't other premier threats.
Yeah.
And then in one set, they give you 2 premier threats that generate advantage and hit hard, where Delver only hits hard.
So you're talking about Ragavan and what else?
And Dragon Rage Channeler.
Okay.
So those 2 cards have been, since they've been released, have been 4-ofs in every Delver shell that has performed well, right? Cool. Blue-Red Delver is now a thing. They've been able to cut green because they don't need the extra cards anymore. Red has all the tools that they wanted.
The only card you were playing in there was sideboard cards and Tarmogoyf. And if you get something that hits harder than Tarmogoyf, why not play green?
And I am arguing that now whether or not Days ever goes or not, I don't care. I'm still going to play Magic. I'm going to enjoy it. It's what I like to do. But I'm saying that systemically, over time, Days will only continue to be an issue because of what it allows for. So as they design more powerful 1-drops, Days is going to further exacerbate the die roll because they're not going to stop making powerful 1-drops to sell packs, right? They want us to buy new cards. They want people to play with new cards. They're going to make more powerful new cards, which means that if they print more powerful things that can snowball advantage like Ragavan on turn 1, backing it by Days means that if you win the die roll, it is like overwhelmingly favored versus if you're on the draw. And that is perpetuated by Days. So if we're looking at all of the cards that people have been discussing, at least since MH2 came out, as what would need to get the axe, the one that jumps out to me as a systemic issue is Days because of how badly it exacerbates the die roll. Now, unless they solve the die roll issue, like the play draw issue, which is a whole different thing, and I don't even know how you would go about doing that.
Yeah, that's. Oof.
But like, let's say
the coin. Do like Hearthstone. Everybody gets a card in their hand that's worth 1 mana.
If in the future they just print a Ragavan variant that is a goblin guy that draws a card, right? It's a 2/1 with haste that's an Ophidian, right? Pretty snowbally, right? That would be a horrible design. And it would be way worse if you weren't able to interact with it on turn 1 because Days just takes that agency away from you. Yeah. And if you don't walk into the Days, then the snowballed advantage already takes place and you're way too far behind anyway. So systemic cards that create systemic issues are the ones that I think should most likely be in ban discussion, regardless of whether or not you identify the format as them always having a place. Great. Now that I've gotten all that steam off my chest,
agree with
what
you,
else would you like to talk about?
I don't want Days to go. Let's talk about the new cards that we've seen. There are 7 new cards that we have seen thus far that we can talk about. I don't think all of them. I don't. Yeah. Well, so Consider. I definitely want to talk about. Let's start with. Let's start from the bottom up. Right. We've got these lands. Cool. Whatever. Black and white lands. Cool. There's Join the Dance, which I don't think will see play. Join the Dance is 1 green, 1 white, a sorcery that creates 2 white human creature tokens. It's got flashback for 5 mana. That's 3 green and white.
I wouldn't be I would be curious. I mean, maybe humans, the mana base is just too pinned because of like shit like Ancient Ziggurat and Cavern.
Yeah, I think that's why this card won't see play.
This is pretty good for a card that wants for humans as a deck that wants to go wide, that cares about bodies entering between Thalios Lieutenant and Champion of the Parish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
those do care.
They do care, but I don't think because of the mana issues you explained with if this was a human sorcery, and you could like tribal it in.
Tribal, yeah.
Sure.
Sick.
It should be a satyr sorcery, if anything, right? But anyhow, no satyrs in this set. But yeah, I think for the reasons you stated before that this card won't see play. When if this was just a 1/1 that created another 1/1 when it came into play, that would probably be enough to make it see play.
I think the cool thing about this though is that
or something.
It's the first time we're getting multicolor flashback cards. So
wow, I had no idea.
No idea, right? But when they were spoiling these first set of cards, they were like, here's an example of a multicolored flashback card, which we've never done before, which is crazy.
Yeah, and everyone was like, so?
It just never even occurred to me when they said that.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute, in 30 years, there's never been, and then I was like trying to rack my brain, and I was like, yeah, I guess there aren't, because, I mean, if there were any, none of them were playable.
Yeah.
Because there's just none of that.
Yep.
And it's really interesting that they've experimented with like alternate costs to flashback, like sacking creatures or paying life, but not just 2 different kinds of mana.
Okay, we have Play with Fire. Play with Fire deals 2 damage to any target. If it targets a player, you get to scry 1. I don't think this would see play.
Not a chance.
You have stuff like like the stage?
Light up the stage?
Light up the stage that exists, and that's better than playing something like this.
I think there are just so many burn spells that have a higher damage to mana output. And right now, 2 damage is not the magic number.
Not enough, yeah.
It's 3 damage is a magic number because of Dragon Rage Channeler. That's delirious.
Yeah.
So right. I don't think this is going to get there. I mean, it's really interesting that they have both Surveil and Scry. Like Scry is evergreen, but Surveil isn't, and they have both in this set. But
yeah,
I think that this in the younger formats will definitely supply. This is just an upgraded shock. So your Pioneers,
they have both of these in the set. Bite your tongue, sir.
We have both of what in the set?
Surveil.
They do have Surveil. Consider has Surveil 1.
No, it doesn't.
It says, look at the top card of your library. You may put that. It says it's Surveil 1.
But it doesn't say Surveil 1 on it. It should.
Yeah, they should just make it evergreen.
So Infernal Grasp is actually interesting. I don't know that it'll see play. It's 2 mana, 1 in a black for an instant that says destroy target creature, you lose 2 life. Here's why it could see play.
Could it?
It could only in this circumstance. I think this could be a Death Shadow card out of the board to play instead of your Snuff Outs.
What does this hit that Snuff Out doesn't that you care about in the format?
Grizzlebrand?
If a Grizzlebrand is on the table, you're dead.
You're probably dead, yeah.
If they drew 14 in response to you killing it, it doesn't matter that you killed it.
Fair enough. All right, we'll move on from there.
I think that Legacy is past the point of a 2-mana removal spell only dealing with creatures.
Like I said, sideboard at best.
Yeah, I will say, like, obviously 2-mana removal is still reasonable. I mean, you have Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy, but 2 mana for just creatures isn't versatile enough. Yeah, I think 2 mana for destroyed, like they could just print 1 in a black destroy target creature, and I think it's priced out of Legacy.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you completely.
If it exiled, yeah, because then it can deal with shit like Uro.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Champion of the Perished.
How do you feel about color shifting for puns?
I mean, I like Weird Al. You know, I'm a pun guy.
It's a Weird Al guy.
I have my wife has groaned more than once when I've said a thing. You know, mm-hmm. I'm sure you're in the same bracket. You know, I'm sure your girlfriend has groaned once or twice in her day because of
the best kind of jokes are the ones where you don't laugh. It just feels like you got like hit just slightly too hard in the stomach.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you're the Magic the Gathering primitive parody artist. You've said a pun here or there, so it's hard to pass judgment.
I pass no judgment. I think so Champion of the Parish is just Champion of the Parish, color shifted in a black, caring about zombies instead of humans. Otherwise, it's the same card. I don't care that they've color shifted this one tribal card, right? I think the best thing that's come out of this, and it's I hope they do it in every plane we go back to, is it has created so much fantasy booking of people being like, please don't color shift like Thalia. Please don't design a black Thalia. Don't design a green Thalia. And I think that has generated at least a lot more joy in my life of people like dismaying over what they could see than this actual card. So I'm for it. I'm for the puns. Let's go.
Phil, keep talking. I'm going to get my doorbell real fast. I've got some stuff that came in. It's going to take me 2 seconds.
This is a popular dude. I'm going to talk about Triskaideka Phil. That's me. This card is a 1/3 for 1 in a blue. It says you have no maximum hand size. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. And then it has an activated ability of 3 in a blue to draw a card. Now, in the circumstances where you have 13 cards in your hand and haven't already won the game, I don't know what game you're actually playing anymore. Now, maybe Triskaideka Phil is the card that Nate would love because maybe it is finally the win condition that Kobolds has wanted all this time. You play your Glimpse, you play out all your kobolds,
you play another Glimpse.
You bounce them all back to your hand, you cast Triskaidekaphil, and then you're like, oh wow, I just have to wait now and hope my 1/3 survives until my upkeep, and then I win.
So here's the problem with these cards is having to jump through a hoop and then wait a turn is always like,
While you were gone, I expounded on the idea that if you don't already have extremely high amount of game-winning resources at your disposal to win the game, why haven't you already won the game? Because if you have 13 cards in your hand, you should have already won.
Right? You'd like to think that,
Finally, Grizzlebrand is playable.
Every time you say finally, I really just want to edit in that song "Finally Has Happened to Me," where the one part of the song where she's like, "Finally!"
Dude, I think you should just clip that, and then we can use it all the time. I will say that the most impact that I think Triskaidekaphil is going to have in Legacy is me considering changing my handle to Triskaidekaphil and just capitalizing Phil at the end.
Force of file.
Force of Triskaidekaphil.
Well, let's talk about Consider. Let's consider.
Consider actually has legitimate Legacy applications, and not in a way that's like cute or memeable. Right. It actually is just going to be a playable card. Now,
so this card reads 1 blue mana instant, surveil 1, draw a card.
Sure does. Sure is what it says. So when it comes to generic cantrips, Consider is maybe in contention if you're feeling charitable, like the 5th best blue cantrip. It's not going to be replacing your
it's not going to beat Preordain, right?
It's not beating Preordain. I mean, maybe there's a world where you want your High Tiders to get some extra ops in their deck or whatever, but no. The big thing that this is going to do is it's going to this is another upgrade for Doomsday, because this allows Doomsday to go off having only a single blue mana open. So the pile that you create is, let's say you have cast Doomsday and have a blue mana and a cycler, right? So you can dip into the pile immediately. So you've Doomsdayed, you've stacked your pile, you cycle, you have a blue mana open, you draw Consider. You cast Consider, dumping Deep Analysis off the Surveil, draw a card, which is LED. You LED, you now have 3 blue mana. You cast Deep Analysis from the graveyard with 3 life and 2 blue mana. You now have a blue mana left over. On those 2 cards that you draw, you're going to draw Thassa's Oracle and a Lotus Petal. You now have 2 blue mana and a Thassa's Oracle that conveniently costs 2 blue mana. And that will allow you to win the game.
You won.
So the pile goes Consider. You draw Consider, you're down to 4 cards. You mill Deep Analysis, you're down to 3 cards. You're going to draw the LED. That's going to put you down to 2 cards. You're going to draw those 2 cards off the Deep Analysis. Your library will be empty, and you will have the mana to cast Thassa's Oracle. Now, that is a very lean package that you no longer need Ideas Unbound for. The trade-off is that Doomsday does require you to lose half your life after it is
then you have to lose 3 life afterwards.
And then you have to lose 3 more life. So in the circumstances where you don't have that 3 life, you're not going to be able to go for that pile. However, it does open the door for faster kills. So if you can combo earlier than you otherwise would have, because now you can go off on only having a blue open, that can enable faster kills, which means that the life discrepancy won't necessarily be as big of a deal. We're going to have to see it in practice if it actually pans out, but the actual structure of the deck stays the same, except what would normally go in that pile, you just swap Deep Analysis and then at least 1 Consider in your deck, because you're always going to be able to find the Consider and the rest of the package off the Doomsday. So you don't need to go really deep in order to have this faster line in your deck built if you can open up. It makes me think that, I mean, I'm not a Doomsday master, but I assume that it will open up players to wanting to go into upping the personal tutor count, so you can guarantee a faster Doomsday and then just kill your opponents and just essentially be more turbo than you otherwise are, even though right now
Turbo Doomsday.
Yeah. So what I like about it is,
by the way, your cycler is probably street race. So you basically have to be at least 10 life if you want to do this.
Your cycler could be street race, or it could be the one that sacks the land, because that's not going to be relevant anymore, and that does it for free. Yeah. So, but at the same time, you're definitely going to play a split, because you can only play so many of the land sacking one, because you don't want to draw Edge of Autumn. You don't want to draw too many Edge of Autumns, because that's not good. It used to be when you had Astrolabe, because you could also actually cast it as a rampant growth, which was kind of cute. Can't do that anymore. So what I like about Consider turboing Doomsday is that it's great for the meme as global warming gets worse and Doomsday as a deck in Legacy gets better. I feel like it's really a deck for the times, you know?
Yeah. I mean, all you need is to be able to somehow play Melting from Ice Age.
I would like to take a poll.
And Falling Glaciers.
If you are feeling so kind afterwards, if you could take a poll on your Twitter,
okay,
without looking up how many people know what Melting does.
What Melting does. Okay.
What does the Magic the Card Melting do? And then just listing the options of various things that it could do, with one of them being correct. I would like to see what percentage of people, without looking it up, can actually say. I would not be able to.
I mean, I can tell you right now what it does.
Don't spoil it.
I can tell you right now.
I mean, I guess if you
let me
post that right afterwards.
Let me give you.
Let's play the game.
I'll just give you the options right now. I'll let you know later if you're right. So Melting.
Let's play the game.
All blue creatures are returned to their opponent's hand.
Okay.
All islands are destroyed.
Okay.
Let's see. I have to mix in what it does too, so I have to think about what's going on here. Destroy all Ice Age cards.
Okay.
All snow-covered lands become non-snow-covered lands.
Okay.
Well, let's go with snow-covered permanents. All snow-covered permanents become non-snow-covered permanents.
Sure.
And deal 5 damage to target player for each snow-covered land he controls.
Deal how much damage?
5 damage.
5 damage. Okay. Can I have the expansion of Origin?
Expansion of Origin. What is that?
That the expansion that Melting was in.
Oh, that was Ice Age, man.
Ice Age. Can I have the converted mana cost? I'm sorry, mana value of Melting.
Hold on. I believe it is 4.
4.
It is 4, correct.
Okay, I'm going to guess that it is 4 being 3 in a red.
Yes.
I'm right?
You are correct.
Ooh, we're warming up. We're almost we're following the trajectory here. I'm gonna say that Melting is return all snow permanents to their owner's hand.
It is all lands are no longer snow.
Oh, I'm so stupid.
That is apparently the current Oracle text is all lands are no longer snow.
I am so god
because the snow melted.
Stupid. I'm stupid. I should have thought about that. I'm just gonna go join the dance.
Could you imagine if you got
something
like
player.
If that card was like? Has there ever been a time where someone played that card and it mattered?
No, that's why.
Like no, right? Like not since Ice Age. Like probably never.
Great for the trivia segment on our program.
And flavors on point. Like you got to give them flavors on point.
It's fun to me that they were like, you know what we need to do to remove the snow text from cards? 4 mana. It's got to be 4 mana.
So it's an enchantment, by the way.
Oh, it's an enchantment.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
It's an enchantment.
I guess Melting just does things forever melt.
Yeah. So that also Giant Ballard is the flavor text. Who needs the sun when you've got me around?
So you're telling me that Melting is a Jaya Ballard quippy blood moon for snow permanence that doesn't do anything.
Who would have thought?
Dude, you can turn people's ice fangs off death touch.
Here's where it probably mattered, right? So you're playing sealed deck during Ice Age, right? And you're thinking,
of course I was.
You know what? I'm going to put Sunstone in my deck because I've got a couple snow-covered lands, and I'm going to cast Sunstone, and I'm going to cast Sunstone. I'm going to activate Sunstone, and then I'm going to profit.
I am going to challenge you once again to do
this game.
Once again, please give me the 4 options as to what Sunstone does, and
Sunstone. Okay, Sunstone. It is a artifact.
I could have guessed that.
Right. During your upkeep, each opponent takes 1 damage per snow-covered land you control.
Okay.
Then it could be pay 2 life.
Okay.
And sacrifice a snow-covered permanent. Just deal 1 damage to each creature.
Okay.
Pay 2 life. Sacrifice a snow land.
Okay.
Fog.
Wow.
See. All snow-covered lands become 2/2s.
Wow. It's powerful.
And
that's 4 options. I'll buy it.
4 options. There we go. Okay. Yeah, you know the 5th one's just going to be me making up something random.
I am going to guess that Sunstone does it costs 2 mana?
2 mana is
2 generic mana.
Yeah, 2 mana. 2 generic mana.
I'm going to guess
snow mana. Snow mana didn't exist then.
I feel like they wouldn't print a pestilence effect in generic mana back then. Although I could be wrong because there were no rules. But I'm going to guess it was the first option. I'm going to go with option A.
Deal one damage per during your upkeep per snow-covered land.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that they made a rack variant that costs twice the mana but only deals in snow permanent. Final answer, locking it in.
Sunstone is a poly artifact that sacrifices. It's 2 mana to sacrifice a snow land to prevent all combat damage.
Oh wow, it's a fog effect.
And so then your opponent played that, and he had like 5 snow lands out. And he swung at you, and you're like, oh, no, I'm going to lose because he's just going to keep swinging at me, and I can't crack back. And then you draw Melting, and you're like, it's time. Melting.
Okay, you want to know what I want to do? You want to know what I want to do?
Yeah.
Because we have access to – we now can do things on our YouTube, right?
Yep.
And we can there must be a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire overlay, right? Can we just do an episode –
Oh, I'd love that. We're already going to do the what's it called? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? The match game episode.
Let's play a game of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but using anything in the game's history. It doesn't have to just be cards. It can also be events or notable things.
One of my all-time favorite things to do is just like bad old Magic trivia.
Yo, you know what we should do? You know what we should do? Nate, I know you're listening, Nate. I know you still listen, Nate. I propose that Nate's
married already.
Feature,
you can't propose to Nate.
I propose that Nate's next return to the podcast is as our Regis Philbin.
Ooh, I like that. Final answer.
So you and I will both take cracks at it. And hey, maybe we'll have a Patreon member also come and take a round of Who Wants to.
It'll be me, you, and a Patreon member versus each other and Nate asks the questions.
And Nate'll be our Regis Philbin, and we'll call it Who Wants to Eternal Durdle.
Who wants
to eternally durdle? Who wants to durdle?
Who wants to be a thrillionaire?
Who wants to be a thrillionaire? Who wants to be a billionaire?
I think we've run out of time.
That's what we got.
I think we can call it there. Once again, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. One of who will be on this fever dream of an idea that Phil's just come up with.
I can't wait. It's gonna be great.
You can join and support the show at patreon.com/eternaldurdles. That helps so much. It helps us know that people are listening.
And
number one.
Consider this. If you are on our Patreon, it is your entry into potentially getting to play Who Wants to Eternally Durdle.
Yes. All right. Yeah, I think that's it for this week. Have a good week, everybody. We will see you in a couple of weeks. We're going to take a little bit of a break just to break up the rest of the month. And then we'll be back pounding the pavement, talking about there's a ton of legacy events coming up in September.
Oh, yeah.
We need to talk about, so
we got Leaving Our Legacy open at the end of August. There's the Legacy Pit open that's happening in September.
The Pit?
I'm ready to sign out. All I have to say is fuck format identity.
All right. Later on.